welcome back to The Missing Link. So here with Brendon again. Last week we were having a chat about the differences here or talking about fatigue originally, and then we started talking about this concern that we have with this crossover with work health safety legislation and heavy vehicle national law when it comes to fatigue. It's a concern that we've had because a lot of companies, I think, do cross over. And I think to start with, Brendon and I probably used to debate it a fair bit. And I'm going, yeah, this is a law. And he's going, yeah, it might be the law, but you could still get done this way. And I was thinking, can you really? But as time's gone on, we've realised 100%. I agree with you completely, mate. As always.
Are you saying I was right?
I just said I agree with you a bit. So, yeah, you were right. Before we get into that, just last week we talked a little bit about the SMS, and we sort of just talked about it and thought it would be a really good idea to maybe just bring you a little bit of what we know, because mainly just in layman's terms. So Brendon knows more about this than I do. Like I said, he retains the information a lot better than what I do. When you go back to chain of responsibility and how all that sort of stuff came in, we'll go back to the beginning, because we do come into the odd company going, how long has this chain of responsibility stuff been in? Mainly big organisations say that because they just don't get it. So chain of responsibility came in 2014. The catalyst seemed to be there was a spate of really bad heavy vehicle accidents. There was one of the ones was the Coots accident where the tanker ran away going down Monavale Hill and had the fireball at the bottom, which was horrific for the driver and all of the people involved. That was the bit that seemed to bring it in. So the 2014 they introduced chain of responsibility law, and is it legislation or law? It's legislation. Yeah. Sorry, it's not law. It's not a law. Heavy vehicle national law is chain of responsibility legislation.
Yeah, part of the law, but yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to get that right. So that was the first time that it came in. There was changes in 2018 where they brought chain of responsibility very heavily in line with work health safety legislation.
Yeah.
And made sure that basically it was around risk assessments and assessing your risk and all of that stuff, which is what the SMS is heavily focusing on now.
Yeah.
They brought out a master code soon after that. And the big changes that we've had now is at the very beginning of 2026, they released a new master code of practice, pretty much like let's say the load restraint guide. It's a code is there as a guide. It's what you should try and work within as you can and base your business around that. And then they're releasing the new safety management system set up there for mid-year, which they just pushed back a little bit there. Now, we thought it was probably good just to explain a bit of this in brief to you. What's happening with these changes, because a lot of people are going, well, what is this? Does it just affect you if you're on accreditation? How's it going to affect the business? What's it going to do? But there are some key things that we do know, and there is a hell of a lot that we still don't. Yeah. The NHVR has been doing these chat forums and webinars on it.
Yeah, so they're doing the industry information sessions, which everyone has access to. So you're able to go on and jump on these webinars that they're doing to give you more information on what's happening and how it's happening, what it's going to look like. So I encourage everyone to jump on the NHVR website and try and find those and lock yourself into the dates. They've got daytime sessions and then nighttime sessions. Obviously, they understand that people are running businesses as well, so they're trying to do as many as they can in time slots that are going to work for everyone. On top of that, they're also doing induction sessions for auditors, which we've been sitting through. We've sat through the first one. And it was sort of a very sort of high level briefing on what the new accreditation scheme is going to look like. And then we've got another one, I think mid-June. I think it's around the 13th of June with the next session that they've got. I think they're running two, one the 8th, one the 13th. And that'll give us hopefully a lot more information on what they've released and what it looks like. And obviously as we learn, we'll bring more information to you guys as well. So it's all very, in a way, it's a little bit last minute from my perspective. I think it's happening really quickly. We're still learning. It's 6 or 8 weeks away or whatever before it starts to kick in, and we still don't know what that's going to look like. So that's going to bring challenges, but we're just trying to learn as we go as best we can. What I will say though, with the master code that you mentioned, Bruce, that it's actually really good. It's obviously a big document, but if you go through it, it's actually quite good. That it's a guide. It gives you ways that you can comply. In, I guess,
And sorry, this is as simple as just Googling NHVR Mastercode 2026.
that's it.
And you'll be able to find it.
Yeah, it'll come up straight away. If you can't find it there, go onto the NHVR website. If you can't find it there, get in touch with us and we'll send it to you. I might even try it. I'll put a link in this episode and to the actual master code, so that way you can just click on it and hopefully go straight to it. So
Yeah, good.
if anyone's searching for it, I'll try and do that. We'll see if that works. If it doesn't work, we'll just ignore what I just
We're still
said.
novices of this stuff here.
But yeah, we should be able to do it. And yeah, like I say, it's gives you some practical ways on how to comply on, across the board, all, mass, maintenance, fatigue, speed, like all different ways that you can, that a business can comply. And yeah, hopefully it'll point you in the right direction. Might not give you the exact answer you need, but it might give you a bit of guidance. So it's not the law. The master code is a way is a guide for people to help people essentially. So that's the whole point.
Yeah, so any code of practice, building code of practice and all that sort of thing gives you a bit of a guideline on what you should do to operate your business. And when it comes to rules and regs, work health, safety, compliance, all of that type of stuff, it gives you a bit of an idea there on how to do it. And the same goes with such as the load restraint guide.
Yeah.
They say that this is just a guide. It's really stipulated quite heavily. It is just a guide.
Yeah.
As to give some ideas. And a lot of really seasoned truckies out there just go, this is a load of shit. But it's there for the people that don't know how to do it. But it's all about angles and chains and ropes. Yeah. My old man's day, they used to tie everything down with ropes.
Yeah.
And then there was the odd stuff that was really heavy. They used chains and dogs.
Yeah.
Right now, over-centre dogs are pretty well banned off every site now there because so many people have been injured. It stresses all of these bits and pieces on there and about the different angles that you look at and how, the things that a lot of people don't understand. There's some people that just aren't as practical and don't get it, that would say that at a certain angle there, it's going to reduce it. The lower the product there, the less of an angle there, the less effect it's going to have on actually holding it down. So that's what it's there for. I mean, you've got to take it for what it is and what it's done for.
Yeah.
And it's to try and get everyone on the same page and at least try and assist the people that aren't used to doing this. Some people are out there doing heavy haulage, mate. They are chaining stuff down every single minute of every day, and they're doing it well and it won't move. But when you get the odd one that's going to jump in, just go to Bunnings and watch in the car park and stand there with one of their sausage sandwiches and watch what happens out there with people trying to strap shit onto their cars.
Bunnings bandits.
My goodness. And then you'll start seeing how that lack of knowledge is out there with people. So there are some people that aren't used to carting stuff around, and there are some people, as we find, that have got a job and because they've got that job, they need a truck license. It doesn't mean they're truckies.
Yeah.
And there is a big issue in the industry when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we see a lot is that they're not your typical truck driver, that's their role is to drive that truck and deliver that load or deliver those goods or whatever it might be. They're doing these other tasks, whether they might be, engineers, they might be doing, asphalt or whatever, and they literally just drive the truck there and back, or they might do a load here and there during the day. But typically it's not what they're doing all day, every day, but they have a truck license. They still fall under the Heavy Vehicle National Law. They still have to abide by all of the same laws.
Look at councils, look at Sydney Water, look at, Integral Energy, like these types of people there where you get someone and they're a qualified electrician, but now they've got to suddenly drive a six-wheeler truck, which is a 23-tonne GVM truck, and it's got an elevated work platform on the back, and they need to do that, and they need to drive it. And therefore, mate, you need to get a truck license. Oh, rightio.
Yeah.
And so they're all automatic Japanese trucks. It makes them nice and easy to drive.
Yep.
But these guys aren't seasoned truckies. But they still fall underneath the same laws. And that's what a lot of this stuff's out there for. So people need to understand what it is instead of poo-pooing it and realise that there's a big, broad cross-section in this industry.
Yeah, and the last episode we touched on the fatigue bit. These guys are key to that. And so they're running around typically local. Have never filled out a work diary, probably never even owned one, but they have to understand their work and rest requirements. They have to know how to record it. The company has to be checking it. And typically those types of businesses are really failing.
They have about as much idea as this Yeti drink bottle.
It's a very nice drink bottle, actually, that, Bruce.
It is, yeah. My daughter actually did these for us, Yeti, and she did a copy Southbound one there for Brendon, and then I said, I really like this, I'll keep on Truck and Logo, and that way we don't mix them up, because Brendon doesn't like backwashing his water, so that's
let us know if you like them, and we might get some up on the Copy Southbound
That'd
store.
be pretty cool, actually, wouldn't it? We should do that. Anyway, another story. So when it comes to the SMS, can you explain a few of the things in there that have happened? Now, firstly, with the master code, I mean, there's a big emphasis being placed on executive duty.
Yeah, well, I think...
it's always been there, but they've really harped on it now.
Yeah, so I think there's more focus on making sure that executives are aware of what's going on in their business, right down to the day-to-day operations, what the risks are, and that they're actively putting things in place, resources, putting money towards that sort of stuff, and then also assessing that what they're doing is actually working, is actually controlling those risks. And I think one of the things is that it's something that, like, especially with the master code, that's, I guess, mandatory reading for executives. You need to be across this stuff. You can't say, well, I hired this compliance manager and I pay them 150 grand a year and they should be doing it. It's your duty. You have a duty as an executive of a business to be across it, and that's one of the really key pushes, I guess, with the new system, is to make sure that executives are responsible for it and that they're, I guess, fulfilling their obligations. I guess one of the other big sort of shifts is the focus previously was around speed, fatigue, maintenance, mass, dimensions, loading, those really key areas that everyone sort of always heard about. Now it's really expanding across all operations, even down to premises.
This is a big one too.
Yeah, and I think they call them, foundation activities. So what is it that you're actually doing in your business? Because it quite often expands, outside those key areas that it used to look at, like the mass, speed, fatigue, maintenance dimensions, that sort of stuff. That really, those key areas, it expands outside of that, where the risks can lie. And so that's where they're trying to capture more of what is actually specifically in your business. So if you've got a depot where trucks are coming in and out of and they're loading, and you might have people walking around in there, and light vehicles, heavy vehicles, plant, machinery, that sort of stuff operating on site, how are you controlling those risks? What does your site look like? Do you have traffic management plans, evacuation plans? Is it line marked? All of that sort of stuff. Making sure the pedestrians can't access areas where they shouldn't be going. That's all falling under the chain responsibility now. So
before it was just work health safety. It would be a safe work cover, work safe situation, depending on what state you're in, where they'd come out and they'd have a look at you and they'd give you a notice to produce or whatever, or some improvement notices there to try and tidy up. What we find is chain of responsibility. If you get done underneath heavy vehicle national law and COR comes in, it's a lot harder on you. It's a lot stronger, and I think to know that you could get prosecuted underneath COR laws is very concerning for anything that's happening in your yard. And this isn't just a yard if it's not like a yard where you've got warehousing and stuff like that. It's any yard. Yeah. So if you just got a depot where you park your trucks, you got a gravel depot and all of that sort of thing, you'd be worried about someone tripping over in a pothole. When we have a look at the concerns, let's say someone getting hit and killed in your yard. Yeah. So the middle of winter, guys starting at 3 o'clock in the morning, windows and everything are all covered in dew and fog, and you can't. Have you got a hose down there so they can hose it off? Is there a written instruction or a procedure?
What's the lighting
they've been trained? Yeah. Can they actually see what they're doing? Are they doing their pre-trips early in the morning, or do you say if it's dark or it's pouring rain, do them of an afternoon when you get back, but they still should be kicking their tyres? It gets down to how do you prove that they're doing a pre-trip? Now, this is... People will be there just saying, this is ridiculous, but this is what they actually look at. When it comes down to the crunch, if someone's hurt, they want to know why.
Yeah, and could it have been avoided? And what could you have done to control that risk, to mitigate that from happening? I guess, if there's something that you could have done and you didn't do it, then you potentially can be prosecuted for it if someone's been killed, especially like that's the sort of thing that we want to try and get out of the industry. People dying, and that's across all industries, but too many people lose their lives in the transport industry, whether it's on the road or in a depot. It's still in our industry. So we're really trying to reduce that and trying to make sure that people are aware of what the risks are, where they are, and that they're taking responsibility on putting those controls in place. So that's kind of where it's going. But yeah, those foundation activities, I think, are really key for people to try and get their head around. Is that it's not just that key stuff. So you really need to be looking at your entire business and where your risks lie. What sort of stuff can go wrong, how it can go wrong, what can you do about it, what systems can you put in place, all of that sort of stuff. So risk assessments and honest risk assessments are key. And just
not
be
plagiarised.
Just be really honest with it and go, is that a risk? Is that a chance of happening? If it's a chance of happening, well, how can we stop that from happening?
Yeah.
That's the sort of stuff, and just be really honest about it, because too often we see, like, with subcontractor management, you send some stuff out to a subcontractor, they send it all back, tick every box, say, yes, this is beautiful, I've got all this in place, tick, 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 and send it back. Now, 9 times out of 10, they don't have all that stuff in place. If they do have it in place, it's not great. It can probably use improvement. So just when you're doing that stuff internally and looking at your own business, look at it honestly and objectively and say, well, how can we be better? I think that's across the board. That's the aim, is to try and lift the level of safety in the industry. That's the whole point of a safety management system, is to lift that level of safety in the industry.
Yep. And that's because of probably a little bit of an unskilled labour workforce that we've seen, where, and this comes up a fair bit, where kids used to be able to go to work with their dads and learn the ropes and whatever. Well, now they're not allowed to because of safety, but therefore we're getting a little bit unskilled.
Well, it's affecting safety now too.
Yeah. And also things such as, phones and tablets and sitting there watching screens and that sort of thing there, where people aren't getting out and doing the practical stuff that they used to do when they're younger. Yeah. And so they're probably losing a bit of that as they get older. Yeah. Some of the more practical people we see are the ones that have come off farms, off properties.
You took the words out of my mouth. We see it so often, the kids from the country that have grown up on property, on land, on farms, that are doing that practical work, growing up around it, being part of it. So often they're so much better at applying those skills as they get older into real work, into the real world and into the workforce, whereas the kids from the city aren't getting exposed to it. So, and it's not their fault, it's just the nature of their environment and what they're brought up in. Quite often they don't have that practical skill, that practical knowledge. So when we talk about, well, they should bloody know, well, okay, how do they know? Yeah. Where are they learning that? And the kids from the country are just learning that from being around it, growing up in it. We see it all the time.
Exactly. So this is where this executive duty comes in, where there was a time where the owner of a company could turn around and say, I don't know, I've got a compliance bloke who looks after that, or the girl down in the office looks after this or whatever, or they should just bloody know what they're doing. That can't happen anymore. Yeah. They're making it very clear that the owner of the company and key management need to understand what's happening and how the place runs. And this is where job descriptions come in. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah. We touched on this a little bit with Gilly and Bristow, but we've just had some personal experience with this, and we still are, where people, one of them's where there's an incident and a guy we're interviewing just said, oh, no, that bit's got nothing to do with me. I have nothing to do with that at all. We said, okay, and while he was saying that, Brendon's reading his job description, and the second point on the job description was that this was his responsibility. I guarantee you have an incident there where someone's killed, the NHVR will ask for job descriptions and they will have a look and see who is responsible, and notices start going directly to that person. Yeah.
And we see like the notices to produce all the time have that sort of stuff they're asking for all the time, is job descriptions and then training records. So there's probably 2 parts to it. So the person if it's in their job description, well, they're responsible for it. But then the company, the operator, their responsibility is to make sure that that's communicated to that person. So show us those records. If that's in their job description, how did they know it's in their job description? Did you induct them into it? Have they signed off on it? Were they aware of it? Are they competent in actually fulfilling that role? And so, yeah, there's two parts. That person wants to absolutely make sure. So if you're in a role right now that, you know, you've got some responsibilities, you want to know what's in your job description. You want to make sure that it's not just being slipped in there and you're unaware of it. But as an operator, as a company, you need to make sure that you're communicating that to your staff and that they know what their responsibilities are and that they're capable of implementing them. You know, that's a huge part of it, because we see that all the time where there's someone in a role and it doesn't matter what their title is, they might be wearing 10 different hats, but if they're capable of doing it, you need to make sure that they're aware that that's actually part of their responsibility. You know, it's one of the shortfalls we see all the time.
Yeah, which can throw you under a bus if something goes wrong.
Yeah. You don't want to be in a prosecution where it's your responsibility. You weren't even aware of it as the employee, as the staff member, or as the company, because you're both responsible for it.
Yep. So let's look at this scenario where someone's got their driver's been out there, he's been away for a few days, he comes back on the Friday afternoon, and before he goes home, he goes down the back there and starts washing his truck. Now, this is where we fall into this, what is work and what isn't work, but also what is work health safety legislation and what is chain of responsibility or heavy vehicle national law. So what the law will state there is if anything to do with the truck, you're regarded as working. Now, we've had this come up many times where they say, well, what if the guy's come back and then he works in the workshop for a few hours? And you could turn around and say, oh, well, as long as he's not working on a truck or his truck and he's just sweeping floors, it's okay. So this is where this argument would come in there. Discussion, which was Brendon and I have, we don't argue about anything, which is good. But it was a discussion thing there that we were talking about. And the first incident we came across with this in a pretty big way was when we were involved with a company that had a notice to produce given to them. It was a road rage incident that one of their drivers, who was pretty laxy-daisy, he threw a banana peel at a car or something, and the guy decided to ring up the police, and then it got reported to the NHVR, which is ridiculous. And so they came in, did an investigation in there. The NHVR guys are actually pretty good, but they contacted us and said, look, you might get a phone call from these guys. They said, they've actually got some really good systems in place. We actually think they're not a bad company, but there's some breaching that's going on in there and we're a little bit concerned about it. So in this instance, I had a supervisor would hop into a truck and drive out to site, and then he'd hop out of the truck and he'd work all day, and then he'd hop back in the truck and drive 2 hours back. And they were saying, well, he's breaching because he's actually done 16 and a half hours for the day. We were saying, yeah, but he's only driven 2 hours out and 2 hours back, and this is where the argument came in. This is a really good topic for debate.
Yeah.
So under the heavy vehicle national law, he was okay because he wasn't driving that time. But if he hopped out of the truck and he was operating that vehicle, he was regarded as working. So at the time they were saying if he hopped out of that truck and let's say it was, say he had a Bobcat on the back, so he unhooked the trailer, dropped the Bobcat off, and then he started proceeding to load trucks all day and then hopped back in, loaded it up and came back. He's work/drive all day.
Yeah.
But if he hopped out, he was a supervisor, he's holding a lollipop, doing a bit of that stuff, guiding everyone around there, he could actually log off. So this is where this argument came in. Now, and I was saying to Brendon, well, the law states this is going, yeah, I know, but he's still working. I'm saying, yeah, but this, and he's going, yeah, I know, but he's still working. But Brendon, look what time it is. We should go to the pub, yeah, but he's still working. Like, no matter what I said, he just kept saying he's still working. This is Brenno's, straight to the point. Let's cut the crap. Don't give me your excuses. He's still working.
Well, that, and the other side of it is he resting?
I said, no, he's still working.
No, that's right. That's right.
Oh, sorry, that's what you said.
So, like, even like to the point where, about, when he wants to, we bring him back and he's in the workshop for a few hours. He's working in the workshop for a few hours. Yeah, he's working in the workshop for a few hours. So then you're not resting, and that's I think is the key. it might not be something that you would record on a work diary, but you're not resting.
Yeah.
You know.
And this is where we could see, the more we sat back and tried to look at different scenarios, that if you had that argument going, yeah, but he wasn't actually driving, if you went into court, I think this is where this grey area comes in. It would all depend on how good your barristers are. So let's be fair dinkum. If the guy or girl was working, let's say that they'd spent 6 days and all they'd done while they were working there for you for 6 days was doing yard work out there in 40-degree heat for 6 days straight and done 12 hours a day. And then on the 7th day, you put them into a truck and decided I'm going to send them on a run somewhere and they had an accident. They're going to turn around and say, what did he do for the previous 6 days? Oh, he wasn't driving. But hang on, he's been out there slogging it out.
What did he do?
Yeah.
Wasn't at home.
And the reason these laws came in with work and drive is because of guys that would be loading their trucks, tarping their loads or chaining loads down or doing whatever it's doing, all of that stuff, and then they'd hop in and drive.
Yeah.
It's no different to saying, oh, they're doing some work there and then they jump in the truck at midday and off they go and do a job, but you still got to have a timesheet that shows what you've done and what time you started, what time you finished.
Yeah.
Hence them asking for pay slips when they do an investigation. They want to see what hours you've done for the day, not how many times you've been driving.
And that's the thing. And we hear the argument all the time. Oh, so, you know, I could be at home mowing the lawns and doing whatever, working on my car, rebuilding an engine, whatever, and that's not classed as work, but I can't be doing that at work. No, that's right. You're not getting paid to do that at home.
Yeah.
That's why they ask for pay slips.
Yeah. Or how come it's easy for you to go home and you can jump into your car, hook your caravan up or your boat and do a 12-hour drive somewhere with your family?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not in a heavy vehicle.
You're not getting paid for it.
And you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
So that's the bit that comes in. Where, on the other hand, if you had that person and they jumped into a company vehicle and gone somewhere, just a car, that could become a grey area. Now, we do know a company where that happened. A guy who I used to chat to a fair bit came back from a 1-week shift, had to come back to go to a funeral, jumped into the company ute, and as he took off, he fell asleep only half an hour down the road and ran off the road. He was out in the country, in the bush, and ran off the road and ran into a tree and he was killed. And the transport company got investigated because he was in a company vehicle.
Yeah.
And it was only that they loaned him the company vehicle, he wasn't on their time.
Yeah.
So that was okay.
It wasn't work related.
Yeah. But it could have been. Where another company I worked with some years back had this situation where the driver would drive down to Victoria and then had to do a couple of drops on the way back, and we started getting really strict on the work time, and they used to fudge it a bit, but they realised we couldn't, so you'd only get back to Sutton Forest and couldn't make it back to Sydney. So we would send a relief driver down in a company ute, pay the driver to go down there. The, in inverted commas, fatigue driver would jump into the ute and drive back. And Safe Work came in there for something else. This was mentioned, and they said, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
They said, because he's in a company vehicle, he's still on the books.
Yeah.
We're going, but he's in a car. So it's not falling underneath the law, but he's still on the books, he's still working for you. So under Safe Work didn't want that to happen. They said, you're pushing it.
Yeah.
So all of these things we balance out.
If he falls asleep on the way back in the car and dies, he's still falling asleep in a company vehicle.
So I reckon you get knocked off pretty hard for that. We had another company that they brought it to our attention and said, look, we've got a girl who works here. She does her 5 and 6 days a week, but on a day off, she's trying to get some more money. She wants to come in here and she washes trucks. Is that illegal? And I went, I don't actually think that it is. So we actually went to a very well-known solicitor who we know and threw the question in that direction and said, what's the go here? She's doing this, blah, 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 blah. She said, odd one, leave it with me, I'll come back to you. And she ended up coming back and said, right. She said, drawing a long bow, but as far as we're concerned, breaking the law. If the driver came in and wanted to mow lawns, clean windows, clean bathrooms, vacuum the floors, whatever else there, not an issue. Coming back there and washing trucks, still involved with heavy vehicles, you're pushing the boundaries too much.
Yeah.
And then the argument comes up, well, she's coming in there and I'm working anyway, what difference does it make?
Exactly.
She's on the books earning more money.
Yeah.
So it gets really, really difficult, hence it being grey. I think it would become an argument there. But let's just go back to the basics though. If they're the work/drive, it's the same, no different to saying, well, we're out there on site, we're chaining a machine down on the back, it's taken us an hour and a half, we can put down an hour and a half's rest because we're not driving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, The key to me really is that you're not resting. The whole point of putting rest on your work diary or in your EWD is because you're not working. So the work might not be behind the wheel. It might be sweeping the floor. It might be doing a service, whatever, but it's still work.
Yep.
And therefore you're not resting. So if then there's a fatigue issue down the track because you've fallen asleep or whatever it might be, they'll go back and look at that and say, well, you weren't resting in these periods. You're actually working when you're recording rest.
That's right.
Sweeping the floor isn't resting. If you're sitting in a lunchroom with your feet up on the lounge or something, then that's rest, you know. But, or if you're at home, well, that's rest. Whatever you're doing at home, it's your business. You still got a responsibility to turn up for work fit for duty, well rested, within your allowable hours, all that sort of stuff. So that's still part of it. That's still your responsibility as a driver. But for businesses, they need to make sure that they're not, I guess, pushing the boundaries when it comes to what they're classing as work time. Just because it's not driving doesn't mean it's not work. Yeah.
So let's say you've got a company that's got a landscaping business. It'll be the same thing. The driver goes out, does a couple of loads, and they go, we don't have any more on for the day, more loads. Can you just go down and jump in the loader and start blending some material for us or whatever else? They're loading some trucks for us.
Yep.
And that's one thing. But then jump into a truck and, we've got one more load to do this afternoon. They're not going to be putting down that they've had 6 hours rest while they're on the loader.
No, that's exactly right.
They're still working.
Yeah. You just took me back there. That was my first driving job with Ted Baker at Baker's Landscape. Thank you, Ted.
That was a while back.
Shout out to Ted, yeah.
Driving the big LNT 9000. Love your work.
That's the one, yeah.
So this is where companies really have to be careful with this and make sure that they do a risk assessment, that they sit down and they look at these variables of what they're doing and how they're doing it there. And the next thing you've got to look at there also, or not the next thing, but one of the other things, is that this doesn't include just fatigue regulated vehicles. We're not just talking about trucks that are 12 tonne and over. 4.5 years ago, the NHVR brought out an alert that made it very, very clear in there. If you're running bigger trucks and you understand how they operate, especially if you are running bigger trucks and you understand what the load restraint rules are, the fatigue rules, the maintenance rules, parameters and all of that type of stuff. If you understand that, for a big truck, you can't ignore your smaller ones. So you have to have these same principles in place for smaller ones there. So if you've got smaller trucks running, and let's say a landscape yard, perfect example there, where they've got bigger trucks, truck and dogs running around, tray trucks or whatever else there, and then they've got their little tippers running around and they're a truck licensed vehicle, that you should have something in place there. So you should have a risk assessment in place at least. Make sure they pull over. They don't necessarily have to comply with fatigue laws, but you still have to assess their risk.
Yeah.
I guarantee you if one of those little trucks there T-bones a car, they're going to come and they're going to have a look at it and they're going to come in and they're going to talk to the company.
Yeah.
And that's when the regulator could get involved there, even though it's not a fatigue regulated vehicle, but it's still a heavy vehicle.
Yeah.
Anything you need a truck license for.
Yeah, and that's where it'll come back to. And the I guess the new SMS requirements is that assessing that risk, or that's a risk. If you've got guys and girls out there driving the bigger trucks and you're managing them really well, you've got great systems in place, they're running on EWDs or whatever it might be, and you're really controlling that nicely and doing nothing for those little trucks, and they're running around all day and then loading in the yard and doing all that sort of stuff, not taking rest breaks, not doing anything, you're not looking at them all at all, and then one of them falls asleep at the wheel and kills someone or themselves. What have you done to assess that risk and to put controls in place for those trucks? That's the sort of stuff you need to be looking at. Outside of the fatigue laws, maybe, but it's still a risk in your business.
Yep.
So that comes back to those foundation activities. That's part of those foundation activities. This is part of your business. It's still a heavy vehicle. It's not a fatigue regulated heavy vehicle. It's still a heavy vehicle.
That's
though.
right.
So really just, I guess, encouraging people to look outside, those key areas and where else the risks are.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they have to stop and take a breath and really walk around their yard, walk around their business and think, well, what's dangerous in here?
Yeah.
What do we have to look at? And it goes beyond that mass maintenance fatigue situation, load restraint.
Yeah.
You have to look at, what else you're doing there as far as that goes, and putting a risk assessment together. There's a lot of templates for risk assessments that are available on the internet, which is pretty straightforward. Safe work method statements is another word for them, but they've got to have a risk assessment built in.
Yeah.
And a risk assessment basically being you look at the probability and the cause, and the outcome.
Yeah.
So you look at what's the chance of this happening, and if it does go pear-shaped, if it does go wrong, what are the consequences that could happen at the end? And then you've got to have a scale there and put in what you can do to reduce that.
Yeah, and I guess the big part of them also is what those controls are. So the different levels of controls, the hierarchy, I guess they call them, is, so elimination is obviously the perfect scenario where if you can eliminate that risk, substitution, engineering, administration, those types of things. So obviously administration is probably the weakest, for want of a better word, the weakest control, because writing a policy doesn't necessarily keep people safe, but making sure that those things are part of your risk assessment. What are those the hierarchy of controls? What does that look like in your business, and how are you implementing that? Yeah,
exactly. So really, the one takeaway from this has got to be that when you're looking at this work health safety or heavy vehicle national law, when you look at the work and rest options there, if you've got someone that's working for you, this is where you have to be extremely careful that if they've got a bit of a spasmodic job there when it comes to driving and working, you have to ensure that they're working on those hours there, and that you can't just say, well, they've spent 9 hours in here, but then we're going to put them out in a truck for 12 hours because they weren't driving for 9 hours. It just doesn't cut it like that.
No.
So you can have these arguments about it, but we've been to court a few times. They don't pull any punches in there. They look at the world very, very differently to what most practical people do. And I think that this is where you'll come unglued.
Yeah, and probably a lot of the things we see it a lot really on like these big government infrastructure projects where they might have, these contracted civil companies in there that, have little excavators. They might be doing, the pit and pipe work or whatever it might be on these infrastructure projects. They're not trucking companies, but they own trucks. They're bringing trucks onto site most of the time just to bring their machines onto site and work all day there, and then they might take loads back and forth and whatnot. But they fall under the law. So what are these big government projects looking at? Are they looking right into these guys, or they don't class them as heavy vehicle people, and that doesn't fall under that banner? I think that's...
Well, I'll just send out a subcontractor form, and they don't look at those anyway.
No, that's
so they're freaking hopeless.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't look at them. They don't look at the ins and outs. All they do is get their insurances back from them.
Yeah.
Let's look at concrete pumps.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
We used to work down there at Homebush, and they'd be the mob down in the corner there would be leaving there at 4 o'clock in the morning when we were starting. We'd see them going out, and we were leaving at 6 at night when they were coming in. We were working in the office, but they're doing some big days, and they would not stop.
No.
They just go because they've got cement mixers coming in. They've got to do it.
Yeah.
Companies and those things are right up on their limits. Like they're very, very big, heavy vehicles there, and so they fall underneath that banner as well. And even the attenuators that sit on the side of the road with the booms on the back of them there, that argument has come up as well. And we've just said, well, what do they do there? All they do is just sit there. Can they sit there with the engine running? Well, they're not resting because they're watching the mirrors all the time.
Yeah.
Right, so they're actually not. Well, what do we do there? So you need to get someone to come and take over and get them to go and sit away from the vehicle and sit down and record a rest break.
Yeah.
Again, so I'm sure that people are going to be listening going, God's sake, like this is over the top. But when you get investigated, this is where you want to do it, because we thought this was over the top too.
Yeah. Yeah,
especially when we're working in truck companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Came up and told you to do this, you tell them to get stuffed.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, who's this idiot?
Yeah, which sometimes I still think that about myself. But anyway.
I thought you were going to say me. we have a mate called Frank who works for Safe Work, and we worked with Frank for some time.
G'day, Frank.
How are you, Frank? He's a top bloke, and he had a lot to do with transport. He probably guided us a lot when we worked for him. He left Safe Work, or Work Cover at the time, for 12 months, and came and worked with us at the company we were with, and really changed our tune on this. And we credit him for for this. I was a transport manager there at the company. This is where Brendon came in and started working as an allocator, and Frankie was the one who came in there and eventually made the penny drop. And I ended up going and doing a Cert 4 in work health safety, thanks to Frank. He said, I think this is what you should do first, and then ended up doing Cert 4 in training and assessment. But Frank was the one who was really pushing this point, and he was just going, mate, you guys, like, you just don't realise how exposed you are. And every time we come in the door and I think, oh, here's this fucking bloke again. And yet he was fantastic.
Yeah.
And we still catch up with him. I haven't caught up with him for a long time, actually, but we still do talk to him regularly, but we need to catch up with him, I know. But just really, really good Panthers supporter, very unfortunate, but apart from that, great guy. And so he really made this hit home, and this is why I think we have such a good understanding of this crossover with the work health safety side now and how it works. And but even I remember very proudly getting some new dog trailers, truck and dog trailers built for this company, and we'd gone and helped design a fair bit. We actually kicked off Adco Trailers. Alex down at Adco is a great guy. And we kicked Adco off with their very first order. And I remember thinking, when you see a truck and dog or any tipper body there, they'd always have just a support arm that was put there. And that support arm was set up there so that if a mechanic's working on it, they put the arm up there and the body comes down on top of it there and can protect the mechanic from working on it in case there's a hydraulic failure and it drops down. And so I decided, well, I'm going to go one step better here, because we always laughed at how primitive they seemed to be. So I had big, heavy arms made, and they were cross-braced, and they were all set up and had heavy pads put underneath them there in case the floor was a little bit how you're going on the body. And I proudly showed Frank. I said, and we've done these, Frank, and I showed him, and they sat up, and I said, look at those, and they can do it. He goes, oh, that's good. He said, what are they rated at? I said, what are you talking about? He said, what's the rating on them? I said, well, there's no rating because you can see that. He goes, no. Are they rated? I said, no. And he said, it doesn't mean anything to me. And he walked away. And I had a real hate for him, but he was on the money because the thing is, it doesn't mean shit if they're not rated.
Yeah.
So,
well, if you have a failure for whatever reason, a weld, whatever.
That's right. Are they checked?
And a mechanic's crushed and killed.
Yeah.
Well, then they're going to go, well, what were these arms rated at?
That's right. And that's where this guy was unreal, because he made us look outside the square of what we were used to at the time, going, but it looks fine. Yeah. But is it? When it comes to court, he knew very, very well that that's where it would go. So that sort of helped us open our eyes with that type of thing there. And we credit him a lot for opening our eyes every time we sit and talk to him, actually.
I think, but it makes you probably think a bit more critically about things too, which, it's probably a good thing in what we do. It's probably not a great thing in our general life, but it's a good thing in the work that we do, because you probably just look at things from a different angle and see, well, what else could go wrong, or how else can that be seen, from a different angle. So it just makes you think differently about things, and I think helps a lot in what we do. So thanks, Frank.
Yeah, definitely. And so with what we're talking about when it comes to this risk, this is where it's extremely important, because a lot of people poo-poo risk assessments and safety especially, and just think, oh, it's over the top. And it probably is, but the whole idea is to have people go home to their families. And I think, a little bit like the police force get pretty blasé towards people arguing with them because they just see so much stuff. And we're becoming that way as well with some of the stuff we've seen, and how easily it can happen to people that we know that have got trucks suddenly involved in an incident, and it's a big one, and it's a game changer for them.
We do, like you say, we see what happens on the other side of things that people don't often get to see, and the end result. And none of us want that for anyone in the industry, let alone people we know and people we work with, and friends that own trucks, and so when we don't make the laws, we don't agree with the laws. A lot of them are over the top when it comes to this stuff. We're one of the most heavily regulated countries in the world, and this is probably one of the most heavily regulated industries.
Well and truly,
so by no means are we blind to the fact that it's hard. It is over the top, but you still got to do a lot of this stuff first and foremost to protect yourself, to protect your people, your staff, your businesses. The other thing is that we see all the time is that, especially in the current climate, the economic climate right now, it's a bloody tough time, and the first thing that goes out the window is compliance. Like, it's the first thing people don't want to spend money on is compliance.
That's why I'm sitting here recording, because I've got no work. No, it's not true.
Or safety. Yeah. So, yeah, but it is. And like, we get that. We understand that, because especially from, the bean counters' point of view, they don't see the ROI on compliance. Well, how much does that make us? Like, how much money do we make from doing a risk assessment? Well, how much money does it save you when you're not getting prosecuted? That's my argument, So, but trying to explain
the other thing you always say is when you compare it to insurance.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I actually think compliance is just like an insurance policy, and you wouldn't be driving your fleet out there without insuring them. So
but compliance is compulsory.
Well, that's it, exactly. It is compulsory.
Yeah.
So, I think you just, while it can be painful, I think it can also help with productivity as well. I think if you do it really well, and get your people on board, get your staff on board, and have a good culture around it, I think it can really help businesses. It can help you. It can also help you, win work and that sort of thing, because it's quite commonly expected these days anyway. When you're tendering for jobs and that sort of stuff, which more and more people would be aware of that they've got to supply this sort of stuff for tenders of jobs. So, I think the bean counters of the world are probably slowly getting dragged on board. But like I say, I think it is a tough time. Compliance is the first thing that probably gets pushed aside when times are tough and you're trying to save money, and we completely understand it, but just be very careful as to what corners you're cutting when times are tough.
Really, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so when you look at documents you can actually get that can help you with this, the first thing you can have a look at there, and a lot of these things are very similar, right? So we talk about when a notice comes in, let's take a step backwards. When a notice comes in, about 80% of them are the same, usually. They want records, retained records. They want to see non-conformances. You need to make sure that you do non-conformances in your business, and that you're constantly looking at anything that goes wrong. And I'm talking about an overload, a truck that's been defected on the side of the road, a fatigue breach, a truck's hit something in the yard. You'll do an incident report, but investigate it and look at it properly. Because
you're going overdue on a service.
Yeah, if it's gone over, put in an NCR.
Put it in there. Yeah.
If you nominate that your services are going to be done at, 10,000 for an A service, 25 for a B, and 50 for a C, or 100 for a C, you need to do them within the time that you nominate. Whatever it should be in your safety management system, your manual, company manual is what we'd probably used to call it. That has to be written down. You have to do it within that time. If you can't achieve that, blow them out a bit.
Yeah.
But the worst thing you can do is when it comes down to that manufacturer's specifications and blow it out that far. You need to look at them. That's not the only time you should be looking at your truck.
No.
Especially if they're running around local and they're chewing tyres out and they're on and off the throttle and on and off the brakes and on and off the clutch. And so that's the first thing. But if you look at, to get these records together, the master code is the first thing you have a look at. There is safety management system that are available on the NHVR website. They may be the older ones, but it's a guide for you to start with. The new one is coming out, and it does show you what's going on. There's a lot of info on the NHVR website. As auditors, when we go in and audit mass maintenance and fatigue, we've got an audit report that we spit out, but there is actually auditing documentation in there. So if you look up the guide for the auditors for each of those modules on the NHVR website, that'll give you an outline. But what you want to look up is the audit matrix. So when we do the audits, the audit summary report that we produce, there might be in maintenance management, there'll be 8 standards. But the audit matrix on maintenance actually breaks down every one of those standards point by point.
Yeah, into different criteria.
Yeah.
The criterion within that standard.
And what the expectations are. Now, this is NHVR's best practice. Go and download those. They're a Word document. Go and download those, use them, and you can change them because they're a Word document. Put down that it's an internal review that you're doing on your own organisation, and go through those and actually see what you can achieve and how well you can achieve this. And it's all about evidence. What evidence have you got? You get a nose to come through. They're not going to stand there and have a talk with you for half an hour with a cuppa and then say, yeah, you're okay, and leave. Yeah. They're going to look for written evidence, and this includes training. You have to do training within your organisation. So have a look at some of these documents, download them, and actually have a look at them, print them out, and go through and have a look at your systems. It's all about record keeping. All of the audits we do are about what records you have there to prove it.
Yeah, you just got to be able to prove what you did. Yeah, exactly. And obviously the accreditation scheme is changing right now. As we've spoken about, we're in the midst of that change starting to happen. But I don't really think that the types of things that are in those standards currently are going to change a whole heap. They're not going to change the world and say, well, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to do pre-starts anymore. You don't have to do fault reporting anymore. That's not going to go away. So that's still going to, that sort of stuff is still going to be a requirement. So these, the matrix that you mentioned, that's the sort of stuff. What's in those? It's still going to be best practice, realistically. There might be some additional stuff. They might amend some things here and there with these new standards that are going to be coming in, but just from my thought right now, I don't really see it going, too far sort of left of centre to what it is right now as to what the expectations are from the NHVR's perspective, and therefore what an auditor is going to still be looking for when they do these audits on the new accreditation scheme.
And the other thing that they're pushing on this new SMS is they want it tailored.
Yeah.
Now, you and I believed in this forever. After working in transport companies, working in operations, working as drivers, running workshops and the other stuff that we've done in the past, we hated generic shit.
Yeah.
I even hate, because I'm really, really pedantic, is when you see someone puts out a document to you, whatever, and they've got a picture of a truck in Europe, like, give me a break, or in Australia. And so anyone that's trying to sell something, if they've got that, I go, they don't know what they're talking about. Hang on, it might be the best system in the world, but they've got the wrong truck on there, they're idiots. So that's just me. So
there's that critical eye.
Yeah, well, I know, but I like to think that they know what they're doing, and and we like systems that are Aussie systems that are spot on. But what they want is to ensure that your system is tailored. So generic systems have always been a bit of a bugbear of ours.
Yeah.
And I would look at things like you'd see a lot of stuff that was plagiarised. So we've gone into places and they're a company that's got tipper trucks and they show you their documents there. We're doing an audit and it talks about container weight declarations all the way through it and how to load your fridge van. And you think, they've gotten this from somewhere else. We had one time and it had Bankstown Council written all the way through it. I was like, give me a break. So someone had gone there and had it in there. It doesn't cut it. You go to court and you've got that and it's not relevant, it can get argued out. It will come against you.
Yeah, and not only that, is that if you're doing training and you're inducting a driver, say, for instance, into your system, so you've got a new guy, comes on board, here's our system, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and it's just generic crap that's got nothing to do with what he actually has to do or she actually has to do, then it holds no weight. They're not going to take it seriously anyway because it's irrelevant to what they actually do. And so that's where the tailored system, if it's actually what they do, then they can really take some information out of your systems and put it into practice in their day-to-day work, then it holds so much more weight. If there is an incident and that person gets interviewed and they say, well, how did you learn this stuff? What was done? Did you, was there an assessment done? All that sort of stuff. They're going to give the answers that you want to give them because you did it properly and your system has been tailored to what you actually do. Yep. It's not talking about container weight declarations when you're driving tippers.
That's right. And we've always believed in tailoring, and and that would mean like a manual that we were doing at the time. A manual, there'll be some parts of it that are pretty much standard. Probably 70% of it.
Yeah, well, it's all still heavy vehicle national law.
Yeah.
So,
and
the laws don't
we
change.
get them vetted by the NHVR. If there's a company's under investigation, we get them checked, and they always check it. And they that bit, but then the other 30% is specific to the company. So we have diagrams of their own vehicles in there,
your trucks,
the weights on their vehicles there. If they've got crane trucks, we actually have safe operating procedures on how a crane truck works.
Yeah, it's not talking about BFM if you're only on standard hours.
Correct. Why have both tables in there? It's because a generic system's been done, or we'll put it in there just in case just in case shits me. So just have enough in there, because you've got too much in there. It's like War and Peace.
Yeah.
It's just too much, and the driver's just going to go, what's this crap?
Yeah.
So that doesn't cut the mustard. So what the NHVR have now done, which we're very happy about, no one else will be, is that they've actually now harping on them being a tailored system for your organisation.
Yeah.
So that's part of the thing on this new SMS as well, that the system has to be tailored to your organisation and has to be specific for you. So you need to make sure that the information you're putting in there reflects on your types of vehicles, the type of work that you do, the distances you travel. Don't have anything about running on a work diary and running on 14 hours if you're standard hours and you're only working within your 100 Ks.
Yeah.
You don't, that's not relevant. You need to have it specific to what you do. If you're doing bulk pressure tanker work there, that's what it needs to be about. Your SOPs have to be about that.
Yeah.
And those SOPs, safe operating procedures, are more a safe work thing. But in those SOPs, you want to make them relevant to the work that you do.
Yeah, yeah, and like I say, it holds a lot more weight at various levels. Whether if it's being investigated, but also the ownership and the culture of your business is going to be far better off if you've got really good, strong, tailored systems that reflect what you do and how you do it. It's going to be owned a lot more by your staff. It's going to be easier for them to manage as well. Even for transport managers, admin people, whoever it is that's doing their role within your business. If you've got tailored systems, they can understand them better, because we see it all the time where you go in to do an audit and the people in there have got no idea what the manual says, because the manual's just been sitting up there for the last 2 years since the last time they got audited. And
they pull it off the shelf and blow the dust off it and hand it to you.
Here it is here. It probably hasn't been touched since then. They don't know what's in it. They don't know what it says in there that they're supposed to be doing, what their responsibilities are. So, whereas if you have a tailored system, you can actually get them to have a bit of ownership over it. They understand it. They can implement it. And they can also help you improve it, because they're the people doing those tasks on a day-to-day basis. So they might, be working within your system and go, you know what, this doesn't actually work. Can we do it this way? And have a bit more ownership of it, but have it that way. It's going to be tailored because it comes from the information that they're giving you as a staff member in that role.
Yep.
So I think it holds a lot more weight.
That's right. And look what Belinda Hughes always says there about the lemon squeezing theory, which is about you can have the lemons there, but it all depends on how hard you squeeze and what you're trying to get out of what you've put forward there.
Yeah.
Don't just have them sitting on a shelf and not use them and have them going off.
No.
So the more you can actually do, the more you can put forward, the better.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's got to be really considered when you're putting an SMS together.
Yeah.
Now, just to finish this section off, and you're better at explaining this than me, with the tier 1 and the tier 2 and what's involved with those systems.
As in the accreditation?
Yeah, with the accreditation and what companies are expected to have there when it comes to, firstly, a tier 1 system, so non-accreditation up to having accreditation, just on what we know so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of still a bit unknown, but so there'll be the general safety accreditation, which is sort of your entry level, and I think maintenance is going to be part of that. And then the level above that will be the alternative compliance accreditation, or ACA. So there's GSA and ACA. So the alternative compliance will include your mass and your fatigue.
So sorry, GSA is?
GSA is general safety accreditation. And then there'll be the ACA, which is alternative compliance accreditation. So yeah, like I say, you'll get your extra weight, your extra hours on fatigue. What that looks like right now, we don't know. We did sit through a webinar the other day about mass and dimensions, and there's some increases there from GML to CML. So the old GML will be removed or increased. So it'll just be the CML weights and then HML.
So what that means is, for those that aren't aware of CML and GML, GML's general mass limits. That's always been your base limit. Then you could go into mass management and you could get CML, which is concessional mass, or HML is higher mass limits, but with that you had to be tracked and have systems in there. They're basically deleting the middle one, but
lifting the bottom one.
But the weights of the GML are going to become the CML weights. So they're just going to have GML and HML.
Yeah.
And GML weights have gone up.
Increased.
So that will mean that if you were on 16.5 tonne on a bogey group, so any bogey group being 16.5, but if you were on CML, if you're on mass management, it was 17.
Yeah.
All vehicles will now be 17 on a bogey group.
Yeah.
And a triaxle group used to be 20 tonne, and on CML 21 tonne, so they're now going to be standard 21 tonne.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's going to change, that they've told us August the 1st, will be the length limits.
Yeah.
And it will vary depending on the combination of the vehicle there. So semi-trailers are varying a bit with a bit of overhang out the back and what have you.
Yeah, they've
having to have
increased the
side
overhang.
underrun, but
Yeah.
19 metres was always the maximum for standard length. It's going to 20 metres. Yeah. What we don't know it's going to affect and how it's going to affect is vehicles that are on that are PBS vehicles and running on a vehicle approval and running on a permit.
And permits,
We're just trying to find that out now, and we'll probably do more of a mass segment on here once we know that more, really well, to try and explain that in the best ways that we can. There's a number of questions I put forward to the NHVA yesterday, and we're waiting on answers back to try and clarify a bit more of the PBS vehicles, because some of them you get like a trailer that's got split axle groups. So some of them might have two bogey groups with a split between them on a long trailer, or they've got three axles and a gap and a second set of axles halfway up the trailer, and all these sorts of weird combinations.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to work.
Yeah, I'm
and
not sure
whether
either.
they still. But then you look at a truck and dog, like a 57.5 tonne truck and dog, 20 metre truck. They were a vehicle approval for those PBS vehicle, but all of a sudden CML and HML were the same weights on those,
That's right.
just 57.5.
Exactly.
And now 20 metres is going to be the norm.
So there's potential there where those types of combinations, truck and quad dog, that could get 57.5 on CML and not need HML. We don't know for sure, but they could possibly not even need to be on an accreditation.
But in theory, they're not even a PBS vehicle, and they'd almost
right.
need
It's
that
like
wiped
that'll
and not need
be
permits, not need
general access.
We think that because that is now the new general
Possibly,
access.
yeah.
We don't know, but that's what we've been asking to clarify to try and get this worked out. And honestly, with a fellow who I know up there, who's a great guy and come from the industry, and I put it to him, and he was, "Oh, mate, that's a really good question." So what we've found is there's that many variables in transport that they're getting various things thrown at them, going, "Oh, geez, we've got to go and work that one out," because what looked all right in theory, when they look at the individual scenarios, isn't quite working.
Yeah.
So that's probably what's made it drag on a bit, is they're getting more and more questions. Same as from the auditors as well. The auditing system's going to change for the auditors.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably to a point that Bruno's and I are probably going to hang our auditing code up, I think. So it's been made a little bit more difficult. And I think that some companies are probably going to pull out of accreditation, possibly. But as they're starting to explain more, it's starting to make a little bit more sense to us now. So I'm not too sure, though.
The auditing part, I think, in a way will be, it'll be better, I think, because, currently right now we're having to do, as an auditor, you've got to complete the audit summary and then you've got to complete the audit matrix, where I think they're going to be bringing that into one document. The issue that I've always had, and we've both always had, is that the matrix is where all the detail is. The operator that you're auditing never even got a copy of that. So they got a summary and they might have got some non-conformances, but the detail of where they were falling short was in the matrix that they never saw. So I feel that I've always had a real issue with that.
And a lot of us didn't bother doing it.
No, and early on, no, absolutely, because there was so much work to go into it. So the more work you do, the more you got to charge. So then the operator's copying it, from a financial
So when some
perspective.
auditors would go in there and do triple accreditation, they'd be in there for 4 hours and charge $1,200 and walk out. And then we'd go in together, the two of us there, and we'd give them a bill for $6,000, and they'd say, "You're kidding me, right?
Yeah.
How come you need two of you and why are you here
and
for
8
2 days?"
non-conformances.
Because we're doing it properly.
Yeah.
And then they've never had a non-conformance before because
Yeah.
they weren't getting looked at properly. So we've arced up about this in the past. Sorry to the auditors that were cutting corners, but fuck you deserve it. So my problem with that, and me putting my OCD hat on, was that, and Brenno's agreed with me 100%, people would think that they were operating perfectly
Yeah.
because
You
they were
can't
getting
blame
passed with
them.
an audit all the time. And then you'd go in there, a different staff member would come in and they'd ask us to come in, or one of us to go in there and do the audit. And you'd say, geez, you've got a lot of vehicles, mate. Let's go in together and just have two of us do it. And you'd go in there and you'd give them a bill and they'd be going, what the hell is this? We've never had a non-conformance ever.
No.
And so it became a real issue there, but you can't sail them through because the people would think they were doing it right. And there is plenty of times, and even one just at the end of last year, where when we finished the audit and they had performed relatively poorly, but it wasn't their fault. They've been getting told for over 10 years that they were doing a perfect job, and they were a big operation too. And I contacted the regulator and said, do not go hard on this company. It's not their fault. They thought they were doing it right. And they've been told by one of your auditors that they were doing it right,
More
or
than
two of
one.
your auditors,
Yeah.
that they were doing a fantastic job for the last 10 years, and they haven't been, and we've just smashed them.
Yeah.
And here's our audit report, and here's our matrices. Go your hardest and have a look at them. Don't blame the company.
Yeah.
So we've stuck up for the companies in that time. And I'm glad to see the regulator has cracked down on that. Some bits probably a little bit harder, but I think that they're going, well, if we're going to go hard on this, let's look at the whole thing. And one of them is that we've got to go and have a security check done, a police check done to see if we're pedophiles in a past life or whatever. And I'm thinking, good on yous. But all the other auditors doing ISO and everything have to do that anyway.
Yeah,
So they're just bringing us up to standard with a bit of stuff there, which is not really the end of the world.
No, I mean, if you got nothing to hide, then who cares? You know,
Not in this
realistically.
lifetime anyway.
No,
So
that's right. But yeah, just back to the actual the audit document that we're possibly going to have to use moving forward it's one document.
it's all in one.
It's one thing, so the operator will get a copy of it, the NHVR will get a copy of it. It's all transparent. Everyone can see everything that's happened and all the evidence is there. So I think it's a far better way to do it.
It is a much better way.
Yeah, and you're not duplicating records because, to be honest, most of the time, what was put in the summary, I'm just pulling out of the summary and pasting it into the matrix, and I was just going back and forth. It was ridiculous. Like to have to do it twice, just crazy. So, I think it's a far better way to do it, and hopefully that will help. But as you touched on, I'm not sure how many audits I'll be doing.
Yeah, we'll just say it'd be a bit of a watch this space.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I'd like to keep doing it for the operators that are fed income. But,
Yeah.
I just don't know. We've got a lot of other stuff that goes on at the moment. So you've only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, so look, I'm hoping that explained a few things. Firstly, the bit with the fatigue is probably the big thing.
Yeah.
And that is what's work and rest. And don't think that just because you're not working on a truck that it's not going to come into play. We really think that this is an area, going on some prosecutions we've been into, this has been getting looked at, and we think that is something that companies need to look at. If you're working in a company there as a compliance manager or an allocator, an operations manager, transport manager, whatever, you need to be talking to the owner of the company and saying, look, we need to stop and take a bit of a breath here and have a look at the whole operation here and what we're going to do, because this will hit you very, very hard. There is a transition period, but I would hate to think that the new SMS comes in and you hadn't addressed it 2 years down the track and then you had a major incident, you're going to feel it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there and you need to get in and you need to move. The information is all there on the NHVR website.
Yeah.
You can find what you need and there are documents on there. And I'm sure that one of the things we may end up doing, we probably end up setting up some sort of a Facebook page, I suppose, where we might have a bit of a Q&A thing on there. If you have questions, come to us and we'll answer you where we can, and we might put a bit of stuff up.
Yeah.
But at least these are still up and you can listen to them, and they're only an hour long, so it's not too bad. And that last thing there was probably just trying to give you a little bit of an insight into the SMS and how it works, and what you do there.
Yeah, and as we said, the more the more information we're given, the more we learn. We'll bring that to you as best we possibly can. We know that, not everyone's, diving into the NHVR website to go and do some light reading. So, and quite often, they put out these documents. They're hard to understand. They're hard to, I guess, to find, or whatever it might be. So, any other ways we can get the information out there, I think is a good thing. A lot of people might just drive along in the car and listen to this and actually be able to take it in better than, reading an alert that's been sent out or an email that they put out, whatever it might be. So, any information we get, we'll try and put episodes out about it, and if you have any stuff that that you're not sure about, send through some questions. You guys know where to find us, so it shouldn't be too hard. So send through some questions either on Facebook or the Instagram pages or emails if you got them.
We do get hammered with questions, and that's the thing that's pretty hard. We always get requests for copy southbound and stuff, and people are thinking, this twit will never get back to me. We are punished by it, but we do our best to get back and try and catch people, and we're not on the road all the time, we're working. So, that's what makes it a little bit hard for us, but we do our best. But for specific stuff like that, some things I might say, hey, or one of us will say, hey, send us your phone number. It's easy just to talk to you over the phone about it. Yeah. And others will just try and send you an email back there with an answer if we can.
But also, if we're getting, the same question come through a lot,
there'll be a segment.
Then we'll do a whole episode on it. If we've got an answer for you, or if we can find an answer for you, we'll try and do a whole segment on that. Yeah.
And the idea of this is we said at the preliminary one was we're not trying to shove it down anybody's throat. I'm getting on a bit, which I hate to admit, and I know that one day I'm going to end up retiring, and you can't get around to everyone. But we've learnt so much. The first 6 months of compliance was just amazing with how much we learned out there. And we think if we can just bring something, if someone listens to an hour of this and just pulls one thing out of it that's going to help them in their business, that's what we want to do. Yeah. We're not doing it fishing for work because we are under the pump, and we just don't take any more work on. But we're thinking if we can use our knowledge and help the industry a bit, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, so I guess that's what we're up to. That's what we do in our work is to help people, but we can only help the people that we're there in working for. And if we're not taking on any more work, well, then we can't help anyone else. So this is just a way to get to more people, get some more education out there. And like we said, we're still learning all the time. Like it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. I reckon I've learnt more in the last probably 12, 18 months, maybe 2 years than what I'd learnt, in the years before that doing compliance. I think, the last 2 years.
There's so much that we've taken on, isn't there? And really getting involved in the legal side. We're not lawyers, I don't have the memory for that, but we learn a lot about the law and how it works, and it's really interesting.
Especially after, companies have had fatalities, which is terrible, but just seeing that other side of it, seeing the notices come through and the stuff that they get asked and how people struggle to answer them, and it's educating us, and hopefully we can do the same for you guys.
Yep, definitely. All right, thanks, mate. Good to have a yarn again.
Pleasure.
And thanks everyone for listening to The Missing Link, and I'm sure that we'll be talking to you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.